Alex Acosta, the plea agreement that he struck was unconscionable and that he needs to step down. A couple questions for you. Does the White House believe that plea agreement that Acosta struck was indeed unconscionable? And does he enjoy the support of the president?
Well, first, let me just deal with Nancy Pelosi and her tweet, which I haven't seen, but I'm not surprised. It's classic her and her Democratic Party to not focus on the perpetrator at hand and instead to focus on a member of the Trump administration. They're so obsessed with this president that they immediately go to Alex Acosta rather than Jeffrey Epstein. As far as I can see, Jeffrey Epstein is the one who allegedly, but it sure looks like strong evidence to me, is touching, if not raping, young girls. We'll see what the evidence provides. But these charges, as Jeffrey Berman said in New York yesterday, are unconscionable. They shock the conscience. They do for me. You don't have to have a teenage daughter to feel that pigs who touch young girls as such, touching children as that, should rot in hell. But it sure helps to have a teenage daughter and feel that way. And now I talked to the president this morning. He hasn't talked to or had contact with Epstein in years and years and years. And over a decade, at least, he said. And he met Alex Acosta when Alex applied and got the job, where he's doing a great job. I mean, look at the economy. So I know you want to revisit what happened in Florida. New York has applied fresh charges to Jeffrey Epstein because they have a right to do that. And I hope we're all paying attention to who the true perpetrator is here.
So Alex Acosta's job is still intact, Kellyanne?
Relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump that is material or significant?
The president told me this morning he hasn't talked to Epstein. He doesn't think he's talked to him or seen him in 10 or 15 years. And he, like everyone else, sees these charges, the description of these charges against Epstein, as completely unconscionable and obviously criminal, disgusting, really. And so, and I think some of your networks, frankly, and irresponsibly, if I may say respectfully, are saying Jeffrey Epstein charged for sex trafficking or raping minors, and you have a picture of Alex Acosta. So let's at least get the pictures right.
Kellyanne, if we could just follow up on that. You said he's doing a great job. The economy's hot. Does the Labor Secretary have the president's confidence at this point?
What I said is that the president said he met Alex Acosta 2.5 years ago when he applied for the job, was happy to give him the job at the Department of Labor. And since then, through any number of reasons, beginning with the president, we've got a big jobs boom. And that I do know when Alex Acosta was up for Senate confirmation, I believe this particular matter was discussed and was he answered questions under oath about it. So, and he's made statements about this since. He felt at the time, I believe I read that Acosta felt at the time that making sure Epstein got jail sentence was very important because it wasn't clear that he would have otherwise. So I obviously wasn't involved in that case. I only know what I read. The president obviously wasn't involved in the case, didn't know Acosta at the time, and didn't follow the case very closely.
But this morning, does the president have confidence as Labor Secretary?
Does the president now think it's acceptable for Acosta to be in his cabinet, given his role in the secret police?
But again, why are you talking about Alex Acosta, not Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein is the pig. Excuse me, Jeffrey. No. But this is what you all do in lemming-like fashion, respectfully, of course. It's Jeffrey Epstein is the one raping young girls. And it looks like some of the people who worked for him may, of course, be accessories to that or luring them in, paying young girls to find other young girls to traffic them. I mean, it's completely disgusting. Can we all agree who the perpetrator is here, who's behind bars?
No one's suggesting Acosta's the perpetrator, but is it acceptable?
You're asking, all your questions are about him and not the guy who's raping young girls.
Kellyanne, he's in the cabinet. Is this okay? Does the president...
Is what okay? You have to have a more specific question. You can't just throw out clauses.
Does the president still have confidence in Acosta, given his role in the secret plea deal?
The president... What secret plea deal? It's not a secret.
The one that was negotiated at the time.
It's not a secret that the man went to jail. I've already answered these questions. If you have a different question, I'm happy to answer it.
The British ambassador should be fired.
The president has made very clear the way he feels about the comments made by the UK ambassador to the US. And I think the president also yesterday commented on the president's view on how Brexit should have been handled. Many people accused the president of meddling and it was none of his business, but it turns out he was right. And I know he's had a good working relationship with Prime Minister May, but the president expressed his opinion as somebody who also won an election based on shaking up the system and giving more freedom back to the people. And of course, he feels the way he has. But you should look at the president's tweets. My conversation with the president just this morning about that entire situation is very reflective of the tweets he sent out yesterday.
We were told that Secretary Acosta there was frustrations even before all this Epstein stuff.
I read that in a piece. What frustrations though? Said he's on thin
not
ice.
Moving quickly enough on deregulation, on certain business-friendly measures, some frustration in the business community, and that he was on thin ice already with the administration.
The thin ice. I saw that in Bloomberg. Obviously, I wasn't one of the sources for that article. I guess the leakers were, but I disagree with that insofar as the president's been very happy with the president's moves on taxation, regulation, energy development, and any number of measures the president has taken to help with this jobs boom. Obviously, he's relied heavily on his Department of Labor to help execute on that, and that involves a number of people. I would go back to who the perpetrator is here. His name is Jeffrey Epstein. I know a number of you really didn't care much and don't care much now to discuss what went on in the Oval Office, or I guess what's now the dining room, when we had a different president here preying upon a different teenage girl. So we can actually revisit that if you want. But let's focus on the people who do this to young girls.
Kellyanne, can I ask you a question as a mother person?
Oh, here we go.
No, it's important to understand. Do you think a 13-month?
Do you care that I'm a mother when you? Do you care that I'm a mother when you say things that my kids read? Do you?
And I do ask those questions to President Bill Clinton. So I do say that I'm equal in my questions that I give to individuals who represent the president. As a mother, do you think it's appropriate to give a 13-month prison sentence to a sexual predator, someone who preyed on young teenage girls? Do you think that's an appropriate sentence?
Well, you're asking me as a mother. I want people who touch young girls the way I see these allegations now. I've not seen the 53-page indictment in the Florida case. I certainly read, as I hope all of you did, the indictment yesterday in New York, and these fresh charges in New York are very tough to read. And you don't have to be a mother, you don't have to have a teenage daughter, although I do, and it sure helps to think that people who treat girls that way and touch them and I guess rape them, it looks like rape them, should have the full effect of the law be brought on them. And I think that's the whole point of the New York charges. This is a different state, different set of charges, different jurisdiction. And if Jeffrey Epstein, based on these charges, never sees the light of day again, I won't shed a tear. But if we're going to do that as a mother, as a woman, as a with me, then do it all the time, because a number of you have kids and I know their names. I don't lord it over you. I don't try to make you feel uncomfortable. I could, but I don't. And I don't think that it restrains you from writing articles and tweets and saying things to each other and publicly at all. I think you've shown very little restraint to me as a, quote, mother. Next.
Does the president confidence that this is going to actually...
Yes, because the president knows that there's constitutional legal ground. The Supreme Court didn't issue a legal impediment decision. In fact, if anything, Chief Justice John Roberts said he left the door open and this president plans to barrel through it. There is no... We asked this question as a country, we asked this question on the census for decades until the Obama administration plucked it out of there, ripped it out of there. Maybe we should just go...
In a different part of the census.
Maybe we should just... Well, the American Community Survey, but so what? We as a country said this is a legitimate question and it was worth investing the money and including the question. I would ask the Democrats, what are you so afraid of? I saw Pelosi's very incoherent, scarily incoherent response. I mean, the Congress takes so much time off. She ought to take a breather once in a while, get some rest, because that was a very incoherent response about MAGA hats. It was weird. What is she really afraid of? Why not ask this question?
I think they're worried about the lack of participation. So I guess I would ask you, are you concerned about the lack of participation?
Based on that question, maybe people don't like the fact that we ask how many toilets are in your house and they shut the door when they hear that. I mean, there are any number of questions that we ask on this census that are invasive, and one would say are invasive and gratuitous and unnecessary and duplicative, but they're on there and nobody's complained about those. I would also say to you, point out to you, that we ask a number of questions on the census. As a former pollster, we ask a number of questions on the census that involve far fewer Americans than the citizenship question would ostensibly mention. So even if it's a quantity number, then we'd have to rip out a number of questions that at the end of the day involve far fewer Americans.
Kellyanne, what is the administration's response to
Is he a persona non grata in Washington?
You have to look at Washington is a big place. You have to look at the president's tweets. You have to look at the president's tweets. The president's made very clear the way he feels about the ambassador in those comments, and the way he felt about how Brexit was handled. I mean, it looks like we're on the precipice of having a brand new prime minister. I think Theresa May's last day was basically as we were leaving the UK last month, and we'll leave it to the British government, the British electorate, whom they put forward as their next prime minister. I think it's obvious who it's going to be, but I'll let them decide. I'm saying to a lot of people who thought it was obvious Hillary Clinton would be elected, so I'll leave it to the will of the people, as I hope you will do next election. And I think you are.
Jeffrey Epstein. Sarah Sanders had told us that the White House was reviewing Alexandra Acosta's role in the Epstein case. Do you know the outcome of that? Is that still going on?
I've seen the public documents. I've seen the public documents, though. I know what Acosta has said. The reasoning was before, but don't we want to look at what New York's doing, Darlene, and see the way they're going to adjudicate this? I mean, if you look at that indictment yesterday, I know we're all innocent until proven guilty, and that includes Jeffrey Epstein. The indictment is overwhelming with evidence and detail and names, and if more of these girls who are now women want to come forward, they should feel welcome to. I know it's very difficult for victims to come forward, so we shouldn't expect that of them, but we should accept it if they'd like to and let them come forward and tell their stories. We, of course, at the White House would never stop that. We welcome that. But I also want folks to keep the focus on who the perpetrator is here, and his name is Jeffrey Epstein. And I know people have looked the other way for a long time at a lot of people's conduct. So good for New York for bringing the charges. Great that he's languishing in prison today. I think that's probably very different than his $77 million townhouse in New York, or his private jets, or his place in Paris or Palm Beach, or his island in the Virgin Islands. And this would be a very different, but he touched young girls, and it looks like he raped them. And so if we're happy, I mean, we're pleased that the Southern District would take a look at and press charges on things that happened in New York. I did read somewhere, and it makes sense to me, I had a very brief stint at the first sex offense unit ever created at the U.S. Attorney's Office here in D.C. in the summer between my first and second years in law school. So I had some exposure to these cases, and they are harrowing. And and I will tell you that the law allows for very serious punishment of people like Jeffrey Epstein, and we should all applaud New York for doing its job on charges that they say happened in their jurisdiction. I mean, the Senate asked Acosta these questions. He was under oath. Maybe you wish they had asked different and more questions. Maybe they had.
But Kellyanne, the fact remains that he wouldn't.
Every time you say the fact remains, I get nervous. And
well, the fact remains that Jeffrey Epstein would not have been on the street and in a plane and in France and coming back to be arrested had Alex Acosta
hold on. You're misleading people as usual, because that's what you do for a living. Respectfully, of course, as a mother and as somebody who has neurons in her brain is how I'm going to answer you. No, I know where your question's going, but you already said something that's not true. These charges are not from conduct that happened after the Miami sentence was completed. These charges, as I read them in New York, are from what years? Do you know? Usually don't. Oh, well, you should. That means that you just came here to throw out your usual question, and you don't have the facts. So when you say the word fact, it's a four-letter word to me. Here are the. No. Well, what are the facts? The charges are based on what years? The charges in New York are based on what years? You don't know. Anybody have a question that they've actually thought about, have researched? Yes.
Does he still have a meeting today with Ivanka Trump here at the White House?
The UK ambassador or the trade? Okay. That I don't know. I don't have Ivanka's schedule in front of me.
Any reaction to the judges?
Anybody new?
With the Fed and Chairman Powell, does Chairman Powell have the president's confidence?
Well, the president's made very clear the way he feels about what the Fed is doing. And he said very recently, I think it was last week or maybe out in the South Lawn recently, that he has the power to fire Jay Powell, but he hasn't done that. He's not doing that. I think most importantly, the news of last week is that the president has named 2 new people to serve on the Fed.
So he has that power, Kellyanne, as it relates to drug prices.
The government has a bit of
that rule needs the rule as it relates to drug prices, that when there's an ad and drug prices need to be displayed,
we disagree with that decision, and we hope that we disagree with the decision. Obviously, the president is very fond of the rule that would compel drug manufacturers to list their prices on TV. Again, what are they hiding? We want transparency. This president, in just the last 2 months or less, has taken action on surprise medical billing, HRAs for small businesses, which nonpartisan experts project could help cover through health insurance over 800,000 small businesses in the next however many years, something Obamacare clearly did not do. And he's also had the big event 2 weeks ago on transparency, where he signed an executive order that hospitals need to be and doctors need to be more transparent. This, to me, is all part of the patient's right to know and informed consent that you and I should have more of as patients for one of the most intimate parts of our lives, our healthcare portfolio. So publishing drug prices on these advertisements is up with that. I also don't understand how we're compelling drug manufacturers for half of their ad is basically all the side effects and everything of a drug, and you're not telling people what the prices are. Don't we want seniors particularly to know what the prices are before they make those choices? So this president is trying to bring transparency to a healthcare system that's been lacking in it, and he's trying to bring more coverage to the 28 million Americans who 9.5 years after Obama-Biden care passed have no health insurance.
Sort of work around or just fight it through the legal system?
Well, we take the long view on all these legal cases, as you've seen in the past, whether it's Obamacare, the travel ban, obviously the census. We take the long view, and we're always looking for a way to fight fairly and squarely through the court systems. And the president is not a quitter, and he certainly isn't going to quit if the issue on the table is that all of us, but I would say particularly our seniors, getting their information, who disproportionately take a number of pharmaceuticals in this country, as do women disproportionately. I would say that we want them, that we're fighting for them to have the information they need. And the other thing about transparency and surprise medical billing is also that if you need a procedure and you get a price here, and 5 miles away you get a significantly different price, a much reduced price, that you should know about the reduced price before you go and have the procedure there. We just want people to have their eyes wide open when it comes to healthcare. This is a president, I tell you, because I'm one of the people who has the pen on his healthcare plan, this is a president who is not having the usual conversation and consternation over health insurance. He wants better health outcomes. Tomorrow, I hope you'll join us at the Ronald Reagan International Building, where the president will be talking about improving kidney care in this country. It is the 9th leading cause of death in this country now, renal failure, and this president wants to talk about improving life for those who right now are on dialysis or maybe on dialysis, the way Medicare treats kidney care. I think it's roughly 20%, 1 in 5 Medicare dollars goes towards kidney care. And he's just trying to raise the profile on issues like that, as he has done, as we're doing with rural care, maternal care, tribal care, opioids, obviously, and as he's doing with transparency, surprise medical billing. We're doing building blocks on our way to better, just more healthy outcomes. So this is part of it. Thank you for asking about the drug prices. We're disappointed in that particular judge's opinion. We disagree with him, and we'll continue to fight so that Americans have the information they deserve.
China, are there any China talks going on?
Yes, I've spoken to Ambassador Lighthizer directly about the trade talks. We first on China, Ambassador Lighthizer and Secretary Mnuchin will continue to speak with their counterparts in China, perhaps even have another trip there shortly. They can announce that. And the president is not, he's patient, he's not going to take a bad deal. You saw that when he walked away from the last official full North Korea summit. He is not going to take a bad deal with China. He's not going to take a bad deal with Canada and Mexico, which is why the USMCA should get a vote in Congress. Congress, are you listening? Hopefully the ground is now softened, the $4.6 billion in humanitarian aid that all but 95 Democrats in the House agreed to, and all but 4 Democrats, who Nancy Pelosi seems to be in a meow cat fight with these days, fun to watch, they even voted against the Democratic aid package. So I think the ground is softening, Josh, to have more bipartisan action on things like drug pricing, USMCA perhaps, infrastructure we would hope. But you saw that in humanitarian aid package. So the net good news from that is, can we get Congress to get a vote going on USMCA? A lot of Democrats see how much this would help the workers and the employers in their districts. Mexico's on board, Canada's on board, the U.S. is on board. It's the renegotiated NAFTA. It's more modern. It's more responsive to what we have now. And I would just say USMCA, Canada, China, it all comes from the same president who wants great trade deals that stop screwing the American worker, the American taxpayer, American employers, and that work better for us. He loves bilateral trade deals, but they have to be fair to America first. $500 billion trade deficit with China, the second biggest economy in the world, makes zero sense to this American president. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Did the President invite the Women's World Cup team? Were they invited to the White House, Kellyanne?